Chinese e-commerce site Temu has skyrocketed in popularity. Its cheap prices and free shipping make it so hard to resist. But are those cheap prices worth it? Welcome to Chine Non Censured. I'm Chris Chappell. Now, you've probably heard of it by now. Temu, the Chinese e-commerce company that has taken the place of Walmart as America's most scorned and yet most used shopping site. It's now ranked as the most downloaded app in all of the United States on both the iOS App Store and Google Play. Temu is also one of the most downloaded apps in Canada, the UK, Australia, and New Zealand. Not to mention many European countries. It first made a splash in the US by spending $14 million to advertise during the most watched sporting event in the country, the Super Bowl. Then it inundated social media through a mix of traditional advertising campaigns and an army of regular social media users and influencers.
Now, as a YouTuber in this space, I have literally received an email from their team twice a week in just the last month offering to pay me money to make a YouTube video.
When I saw comments of people asking about Temu, I was like, oh, that sounds familiar. Why do I know that? It's because I get emails from them in my business email every day wanting a collaboration.
Y'all, this video is actually sponsored by Temu, so if you want to pick up some of this stuff, they are actually handing out coupons if you use the promo code that they gave me.
And I'm sorry to say, if you aren't already getting ads for Temu on YouTube, you're going to now. Temu is like the phantom that appears in the mirror when you say its name 3 times. Except you only have to watch a video that mentions Temu and you'll start getting ads for it. Everywhere. Case in point, many of you reported getting Temu ads during the video we did about why you can't compete with Chinese business, which was about Temu. Pretty ironic considering that the video was exposing Temu's shady business practices. Speaking of which, we asked you guys in the video if you wanted us to do another video specifically about Temu, and many of you said you did, so here it is. As we reported before, Temu is a Chinese company. It's under its parent company, PDD Holdings. PDD was incorporated in the Cayman Islands, but until this year was based in Shanghai. This spring, it changed its address with the SEC to Dublin, Ireland, which seems like a part of a campaign to downplay Temu's connections to China. PDD also owns Pinduoduo, which is a similar e-commerce platform to Temu, but that caters to the Chinese market. Pinduoduo is still headquartered in Shanghai. And Temu used to advertise its connection to PDD Holding in its About Us section, saying things like, Temu leverages parent company PDD Holdings' vast and deep network of merchants, logistic partners, and its established ecosystem. And in 2021 alone, PDD Holdings generated $14.7 billion in revenue. But since at least April, mentions of its parent company have been scrubbed from the site. Now the About Us section on Temu just says Temu was founded in Boston in 2022. Which is true, but it's also not the full story. It's true that Temu, which is actually known on paper as Whale Co. Inc., has its US headquarters in Boston. But when you look at the fine print on its website, Temu says it was incorporated in Delaware. Meanwhile, it also says in its arbitration agreement that any claims against the company will have to follow New York laws. Okay, so is the company in Massachusetts, Delaware, or New York? Well, we did find a Whale Co. Inc. registered in New York, but it was incorporated in 1994, long before even PDD Holdings existed, let alone Temu. We also found a Whale Co. Inc. registered in Delaware in July of 2022, and a registration for a foreign-owned Whale Co. in Massachusetts that listed Temu's president as its president. So the answer is D, all of the above? It's clear Temu is trying to present itself as American, probably because any association with China these days is not exactly a positive one. A majority of Americans don't view China favorably. And there are polls that show similar feelings about China in many other countries. But the reason we say it's a Chinese company is because of how it operates. I'll tell you what I mean right after the break. Welcome back. So Temu is trying to present itself as an American country, but in practice, it operates like a Chinese company. It has its warehouses in Guangzhou, China, and by all accounts, most of its sellers are in China as well. Even Chinese state media frame Temu as a subsidiary of a Chinese company. Temu supposedly uses what's called a consumer-to-manufacturer model, where factories sell directly to consumers and Temu just acts as the middleman. That's a convenient narrative when it wants to avoid responsibility for whatever its sellers do, like IP theft and listing shoddy products, which I'll talk more about in a minute. Temu says your interactions with sellers are solely between you and the sellers, and that Temu can, but doesn't have to become involved if there's a problem. But as much as it wants you to believe you're getting stuff straight from the manufacturer, the reality is a bit different. Wired UK spoke to several sellers who said they would pay to send their goods to Temu's warehouses, where Temu could reject them for whatever reason. Temu also seems to be controlling their prices. One seller told Wired that Temu would ask sellers to lower their price, and if they agreed, their price would be lowered, but the sellers didn't have any say in how much. That resulted in sellers sometimes selling at a loss. Another seller told Wired she stopped working with Temu for that reason. She said if you don't agree to their price cuts, they'll just remove your products from the site, so she basically had to work for them for free. Now, this shouldn't come as a surprise given Pinduoduo's shady labor history, and remember, Pinduoduo and Temu share the same parent company, so similar DNA. Pinduoduo was investigated in 2021 after a 22-year-old employee died after walking home from work at 1:30 a.m. Less than 2 weeks later, another employee committed suicide after asking for a leave of absence. The controversy grew when days later, a Pinduoduo employee who calls himself Wang Taishu said he had been fired by the company after posting a photo of a colleague being taken into an ambulance after collapsing. Wang also alleged that some workers were made to work as many as 380 hours a month, which the company denied. Just for comparison, if you work a regular 9-to-5 workday, you're working 160 hours a month. This lack of concern for the humans in its supply chain is just one of the reasons that Temu is able to offer things at such dirt cheap prices. No doubt this is one of the first things you've noticed about the company if you've ever looked at its products. It has things like men's running shoes for less than $10, professional wireless microphones for less than $5, and a laptop for less than $200. On top of that, you get free shipping on almost all orders. Its return policy says return shipping is free on your first return for every order within 90 days from the date of purchase. So at such cheap prices, free shipping, and most return shipping free, what could go wrong? Well, apparently a lot. I'll tell you more after this quick commercial break. Welcome back. Temu started in the US last September, and already it's garnered a reputation for being like the dollar store of online shopping. Yes, it's dirt cheap, but that doesn't mean it's a good deal. Complaints have piled up on the Better Business Bureau, which gives it a C- rating on a scale of A to F. On Trustpilot, it has 3.3 out of 5 stars. On SiteJabber, it has 3.4 stars. Melanie McGovern, the Director of Public Relations and Social Media for the Better Business Bureau, told Time magazine it's unusual for such a new company to receive so many complaints in such a short amount of time. That was in December, just a few months after the company started. At that time, it already had 30 complaints. Now it's been around for 8 months, and the BBB shows over 500 complaints. Many of the complaints are about slow or no-show packages, bad or completely unresponsive customer service, mega delays for refunds, incorrect items, poor quality products, and malfunctions with the website or app. Just to give you a flavor, one customer wrote, "False marketing and disrespectful customer service," saying free return within 90 days. Then when I return on the 90th day, the website showed the 89-day return windows closed and won't let me create a return label. Called the customer service and they asked why I waited till the 90th day to return. Super rude. Temu has responded to all of the complaints on the Better Business Bureau, but as of this recording, only 89 of the 518 were marked as resolved. Now, as I'm sure you know if you've bought stuff on Amazon or any other site that sells a lot of Chinese products, not everything is bad. Some people have had really good experiences with Temu and would recommend it, especially people who are given free stuff to recommend it. You see, in addition to these bargain basement prices, Temu constantly bombards you with all kinds of offers. If you've seen people on social media asking you to click their Temu referral link, they're doing that because Temu is offering them free stuff in return.
So once you do that, you can just send it to your friends. And once they accept it, you automatically get this product.
And then the price will cut down to zero with the more friends that you refer.
And guess what, y'all? Whoever downloads the app using your link doesn't have to buy anything. All they have to do is download the app and put their information in.
So yeah, if people are getting their stuff for free, even if it's not the best quality, they're probably not complaining, especially with free shipping on orders and returns. But here's the thing, Temu is doing this as a strategy to cut out its competition. It's taking a massive hit to profits, hoping that you make the switch and stop buying from its competitors. If you think that these prices are too good to be true, you're right. Temu and its sellers are picking up the tab. According to analysis by Wired, the average amount that Temu loses on each order to the US is around $30. In other words, Temu is losing millions of dollars to send you cheap socks. And it can do that because it's not just a regular cash-strapped startup. Going back to what Temu's website said about its parent company, PDD Holdings, it had $4.6 billion in net income in 2022. So yeah, even if by one estimate, Temu is losing over $588 million a year, it can probably afford to take the hit, at least in the short term. The other reason Temu can offer such cheap products in the US is because it doesn't have to pay import fees. It exploits a loophole in US laws that say anything below $800 isn't subject to import duties. And included in that cost is shipping, so that's another incentive for Temu to offer free shipping. That threshold is probably why, even though Temu has a wide variety of goods, you're not going to see super expensive things on there. For example, if you search for refrigerators, you're only going to see fridges that are about this size. A search for couches only turns up couch accessories. And if you're looking for gold jewelry, you're only going to get options for gold-plated jewelry. Congress almost did something about this loophole in the America Competes Act of 2022. But unfortunately, by the time that legislation was folded into the Chips and Science Act, that loophole was left in. Staying below the $800 threshold allows Temu to avoid inspections. So if you think there's some measure of security that it first has to go through to pass through US customs, think again. An investigation by the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation found a children's jacket that was sold by Temu competitor Shein had 20 times the allowable lead limit in children's products in Canada. And experts warn of similar problems in other Chinese fast fashion brands. A lot of the practices pioneered by Shein are also being used by Temu. Most importantly, though, their supply chains are both based in China, and we know how high Chinese safety standards are. The other reason Chinese brands can make things so cheap is that they're not concerned about intellectual property rights. We went in depth about this in our video about Shein, but basically, Chinese fast fashion brands have been known to steal designs from other places. Temu says on its website that independent sellers are responsible for ensuring they have all necessary rights to their content. If there is an IP violation, though, it can be difficult for the copyright holder to get justice. They have to send Temu documentation proving that their IP was stolen. But if Temu finds that you misrepresented your claim, it says you may be liable for damages. If it agrees with you, Temu says it will remove the item and notify the seller. But if the seller fights back and makes a counterclaim, Temu says it will reinstate the item unless the copyright owner files an action seeking a court order against the seller. Oh, and that copyright holder only has 10 days to file a claim. So while there is a way to fight IP theft on Temu, the cards are definitely stacked against anyone who tries. And after this final commercial break, is Temu stealing your personal info as well? Welcome back. There's been a lot of concern, especially in the US, about how much access Chinese apps have to user data. That's because the Chinese Communist Party is actively trying to subvert the West, and personal data is just one front in that war. Now, if you're not a Chinese dissident, you may be thinking you have nothing to worry about. Unfortunately, that's probably what most Hong Kongers thought up until a few years ago, too. In a recent lawsuit against ByteDance, the parent company of TikTok, one former employee claims that ByteDance gathered intel on Hong Kong democracy activists and their networks in 2018. And as we all know, just a couple years later, the Chinese Communist Party brutally took over Hong Kong and jailed many democracy activists. China has passed several laws that require Chinese companies to hand over any data the state wants. And it's not like here in the West where you can fight a government order in court. If you don't comply with a government order in China, the CCP will just shut your business down. That's one of the reasons the US has been considering a ban on TikTok. There are similar risks to apps like Temu, which collect sensitive user data as well. While Temu isn't based in China, a big portion of its business is there. And if it's under a Chinese company, it's going to be under the thumb of the Chinese Communist Party. In fact, the state of Montana has already banned it on government devices for that reason. Pinduoduo, Temu's sister company, was recently removed from Google's App Store for hosting malware that allowed it to spy on its users. According to sources who spoke to CNN, the team working on that malware program was disbanded. But instead of being fired, the source said most of the team has been transferred to Temu. Oh, and about that malware threat, it's still there. One cybersecurity expert told CNN that although the exploits were removed, the underlying code was still there and could be reactivated to carry out attacks. Now, as of this recording, we didn't find evidence that Temu had done anything like that. But it does collect a lot of user data. And it's not only aggressively pushing the download of its app, but constantly asks you to sign into an account to use its website. What we did find that was shady was a whole bunch of people reporting fraudulent charges on their accounts after buying from Temu. Here's a whole Reddit thread about the issue. Just doing a search for Temu on Facebook, we found a lot of similar fraud complaints as well. And while that could be just poor data security after what Pinduoduo did, I wouldn't rule out Temu somehow being directly involved. It isn't comforting either that Temu's terms of service say that under no legal theory shall Temu parties be liable for damages, including damages for loss of data. Maybe that's just standard legal language to shield it from liability. But considering this is a Chinese company, it takes on a much more sinister meaning. Now, if I hadn't convinced you that shopping on Temu is a bad idea by now, here's another thing. Temu and other Chinese fast fashion brands that exploit US import loopholes aren't exactly worrying about complying with US laws. The US Select Committee on the Chinese Communist Party found that Temu was flouting the Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act and even admitted it. That act was passed in 2021 to ensure that goods made with slave labor from Uyghurs in Xinjiang weren't being sold in the US. According to the Select Committee's findings, Temu admitted that it does not expressly prohibit third-party sellers from selling products based on their origin in the Xinjiang Autonomous Region. So while you might be able to get 5 pairs of socks for less than $3, just know those could be made with Uyghur blood, sweat, and tears. So what are your experiences with Temu? Let us know in the comments below. And remember, China Uncensored is able to keep making videos like this because of viewers like you. Visit patreon.com/China Uncensored to contribute on the crowdfunding website Patreon, or go to chinauncensored.locals.com to join us on our exclusive social media site on Locals. We rely on your support to help us keep making great episodes. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. See you next time.